So I'm Danny. I'm the program manager with the Water Watchers, and I'm so incredibly excited to be here with you today for Watershed 2021. I grew up on the lands and waters that have been stewarded for thousands of years by the Luisleño and Peyomcowicham people in San Diego, California. And today I'm joining you from the home I've made in Cambridge, Ontario, a land which the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Audouindran peoples have called home for time immemorial. Lands that the Six Nations were promised for their support to the British forces during the American Revolution. It was a strange and tough realization for me that I've made my home on unceded territory and stolen lands. And when I first moved to Canada in 2015 for my master's at UW, University of Waterloo, that was actually the first time that I heard a land acknowledgement in my life. And that was the beginning of both my learning and unlearning journey about the first peoples of these lands, about Indigenous sovereignty, and about reconciliation. So while I'm a newcomer to these lands, it is a journey that has let me better understand the privilege granted to me by these colonial systems. And it is a journey that has led me to better understand our collective identity as a treaty peoples. And it's a journey I have been able to deepen in my water protection work with the Water Watchers. I also want to recognize, though, that this journey looks different for everyone. So I just want to take this opportunity to encourage everyone without judgment to walk this path of listening and learning and to start where you are, whatever that means for you. It looked a lot different for me in 2015 than it does now, and it will continue to look different for me as I have a lifetime of learning ahead of me. It's really powerful, though, to recognize that the social transformations our society needs to truly move towards reconciliation begins in the hearts and minds of people like us. So I invite you to reflect on where your own heart and mind is at on this journey of learning about and alongside the First Peoples and to start there. We have all been fed by different waters throughout our lives. And today, we're all joining from different lands around the world. So I encourage each of us to take a moment to quietly express our gratitude to the lands around you and to the Indigenous peoples who are the traditional stewards of these lands. And I'll also invite you to reflect on the systems and structures that benefit some of us at the expense of others, as well as the ways in which colonialism is one of the ongoing problems contributing to the climate crisis. So let's take a quiet moment now for reflection, acknowledgement, gratitude, and grounding, both in the lands and waters that sustain you and in the learning that will happen here today.
My name is Arlene Slocum, and I sit here now beside the Aramasa River, here in the Dish with One Spoon territory, which bound the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee peoples to share the territory and protect these lands and waters, and in recent years, with the treaty with the Mississauga of the Credit. I welcome each of you here today and invite you to make use of the chat box to introduce yourselves and share the waters from which you come and that currently support your life. And if you are able, share the traditional lands of the places you now call home. I am of settler descent from a wide array of ancestry, with many relatives coming from the British Isles and many others coming from my Caribbean ancestry, with a mix of lineages from Africa, China, and France. I acknowledge that as a white settler woman, I have and continue to benefit from the harm, genocide, and theft of land that has brought me to call this place home. I consider my ancestors and the impacts they have had, both destructive and life-supporting, and I call on them to join me here today in this important conversation that will take us several steps closer towards a water justice agenda. Please also feel free to share in the chat where your ancestors are from and the waters that nourish them in those places of origin. Early this morning, I went out and collected some water from the Aramasa River, and I will have it here with me today for the whole course of the day. This beautiful river that I'm blessed to live by nourishes my being in so many ways. What waters nourish your being these days? What waters are you living nearby? Please feel free to share that in the chat as well. I have been blessed with very many teachers along my journey, beginning back in my very origins within my mother's womb. I recognize the sacred space of those birth waters and the influence of my mother and her mothers before her, back to the waters of our first mother, the earth. I was raised in the Catholic religion and experienced many sacraments where water was the conduit of the holy. Although this religion is not my personal belief system any longer, I am eternally grateful for the sacred role that water has played through my whole life. From my early childhood through until now, marveling and playing with water in all her forms, to the early teachers who revealed some of the mystery and magic of this life-giving substance, to the inspiring work of Dr. Emoto. And in more recent years, I've been heavily influenced by Indigenous leaders on the sacredness of water. Josephine Mandaman-Ba, Jan Sherman, Carol Tyler, Ami Kraft, Deborah McGregor, Kelsey Leonard, Tasha Beads, Wasekam, just to name a few. I am also grateful to an abundant circle of friends and colleagues with whom I have engaged the topic of what decolonizing ourselves and our work might look like. This summer, as we watched the world burn around us, and in other parts swept away in deaths and storms, we can see clearly that this whole beautiful creation is interconnected. What happens in my backyard influences other backyards around the world. What this has shown me as we walk more deeply into the multiple crises we exist in right now and going forward is that we all need to work together for the outcomes we desire. That the fight I have in my backyard is connected to the fight you have in yours. That our collective liberation is bound up together across all intersectional lines. That the forces we are collectively opposing are the same, regardless of which issue one is connected to, whether looking at environmental justice issues or social justice issues. I'd like to name them here because I think there's power in recognizing and naming that which conspires to diminish life and life ways, and that which we must all work together in opposing to turn this thing around. Capitalism, white supremacy, and colonialism. The thinking that has gotten us into the dire situation we find ourselves in will not be the same thinking that will get us out of this. Across the globe, the folks with the closest understanding of the needs of a particular ecology are those who are indigenous to the lands they inhabit. Through vast time, indigenous people have been in relationship with their ecology and thereby have a deep ancestral knowledge and experience with navigating extreme changes in climate and in the resilience needed to weather these storms. And there are many indigenous voices who are bravely calling for what is needed and for declaring what true allyship could look like. I'm immensely grateful that at last year's Watershed conference, Kelsey Leonard and Wasekam set two clear signposts for our work. One was to deepen our personal relationship with water, and two, to center Indigenous sovereignty in our work. These signposts have had significant impact for me personally and have shaped my approach to our work in meaningful ways and sit now at the heart of every decision I make. Our plenary today will explore what land back means and why this is such an important question as we face multiple colliding crises. My sincere gratitude to Makasha Looking Horse, to Courtney Sky, and to Wasekam for their willingness to share their thoughts that will no doubt help form further signposts for our work. When I consider my own ancestors and reflect on this work of caring for the waters, I can't help but think forward to the kind of ancestor I want to be and the responsibility and opportunity I have to shift the dominant narrative and culture of water advocacy. I'm grateful to you all for joining us here in this work today. I believe you are here too because you care deeply about the protection of water. So welcome. We have a full agenda, and in a moment I'm going to invite my colleague Mike Bockwell forward and share with us a bit about what that's on that agenda. And I hope that it will nourish us and the work we all aspire to do. So without further ado, welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Arlene. I'm Mike Bockwell. I work as the campaign director for the Water Watchers. And as Arlene said, I'm going to give a bit of an orientation to the agenda today and to welcome you. Today's an important gathering. It's important because of the emergencies shaping our lives, as Arlene has mentioned, but also because who we are when we are together, and because of the real differences we together are making in our communities through our struggles, our campaigns, and our actions to protect water and the environment, and to move towards a good and just future for the generations that will follow us. All of us today, younger and older generations together, are responding to a climate crisis so serious in its implications that organized human society, according to Noam Chomsky, may not survive in a couple of generations. For me, and maybe for some of you, it's the first time the part of the society we identify with is facing this kind of existential risk. Others, First Nations, for example, have faced the possibility that their society may not exist as a reality for hundreds of years. It's not too late, though, to prevent more climate chaos. In order to do this, we have to learn from each other as fast as we can. This includes understanding what some of the common factors are in our different histories and to find ways to act in solidarity across diverse interests and experience, and as Arlene says, across all of our backyards. Today's agenda is intended to give us many opportunities to learn together and also to celebrate our common efforts. Our learning today begins with this question: why is it so hard to do what so obviously needs to be done? For example, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and transition away from fossil fuels. The scientists have done their job describing the causes and consequences of the climate crisis. A wide variety of technical solutions exist. The leading edges of the climate crisis, heat domes, forest fires, drought, floods, and more are here now, and the scientists tell us there are deadlier consequences to come. The climate crisis, though, is more than global warming. It is also the levels of development and consumption of nature's resources that has led to a rupture in the relationship between humanity and Mother Earth. This is what creates the risk that organized society may fail in the next few generations. There are big questions that demand our attention as the climate crisis progresses. Will everyone have access to adequate amounts of clean water? Will there be enough farmland to produce food for everyone? Will there be employment for workers? Will there be affordable housing and transportation? Questions of will there be enough are at the root questions about justice. Who will have enough and who won't? The society we live in is already unequal. How do we create a more equal society while responding to the climate crisis? Where will we find hope? These are important questions for all of us. Hope begins actually with all of us and the work that we're doing. People know you in your community, and you have rightly earned the respect of many people. Congratulations to you for all you have done and all you will continue to do. You are bringing hope to people and communities all around you. I understand if you're worried it's not enough, I worry about that too. Paulo Freire talks about critical hope. He says that in order to develop strategies that are effective, we must be realistic about the obstacles that we face and what it takes to overcome or defeat those obstacles. You know, we are actually involved in a very big collective learning exercise with a lot at stake. There are no easy answers. There are no silver bullets. All of us are trying to learn as fast as we can. Our own experience and the experiences we're going to share today are an important source of that learning. There are many inspiring examples of people and communities working together to protect water, the environment, and create a more just world while working to prevent further climate chaos. Some of those inspiring people are leading the workshops today. There are 12 workshops, 2 plenary sessions, and musical performances. The next event on the agenda is a plenary discussion about land back that Arlene has already introduced. There are 4 streams of workshops, and later I'll be telling you how you navigate to those workshops. One stream of workshops, I hope you don't mind the water pun, is our Indigenous-led water governance, a space to lean in and listen from Indigenous leaders working to protect land, water, and community. There'll be a stream of workshops on youth-led climate action by youth and for youth and allies on the front lines of climate action. There'll be a stream about fights to stop urban sprawl and to find out why Doug Ford is pushing urban sprawl, highways, housing, developments, gravel mining, and what you can do to stop it. And the last stream is called Troubled Waters, about the troubles caused by the bottled water industry and how to act in solidarity with international campaigns. I'm briefly going to mention our workshop leaders who we're going to learn from today. Layla Black of Six Nations will be screening a film called Blood and Water. This mini documentary shares the story of Layla Black, survivor of residential schools on her path to reclaim her Mohawk identity and the healing power of water. Wasikam Nin will be presenting Elegy of the Ancestors. Courtney Skye will be talking about the Haudenosaunee Moratorium on Development in the Haldeman Tract. In the youth stream, Gordon Takar and Grace Gibbs will talk about the power of grassroots organizing from Climate Justice Guelph. And Horeen Hassan and Danny Lindemood will be talking about the Take Two Watershed cleanup. Kayla Weiler and Andrew Keswick from the Canadian Federation of Students will talk about how to build a base of support. In the sprawl stream, we're very happy that Margaret Prophet's with us today from the Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition. Her workshop's called Sprawl Will Take It All. And then after that, Jane Fogel, who's a counselor from Halton Hills, and Michelle, who's an organizer with Stop Sprawl Hamilton. They'll do another workshop called Don't Let Sprawl Take It All, Strategies for Fighting Back. And we're pleased that Jenny Laforestier and Graham Flint will present a workshop called Behind the Berm, Highways, Sprawl, and Gravel Mining. We'll also hear from representatives of political parties represented in the Ontario Legislature. We've asked them to spell out their policies to protect water and the environment as we head towards the provincial election expected in June 2022. As we listen to them, we'll ask what their presentations tell us about the following. Do they see the climate crisis as a serious threat? Whose interests do they represent? Will their policies help prevent further climate chaos? Will their policies help create a more equal society? Finally, there are also musical performances today from Shane Phillips and from Logan and Layla Black to inspire us and lift us up. I'm very glad that we all have this opportunity to learn from each other's work and to work towards water and climate justice. Thank you very much for being here today, and more importantly, for the work all of you are doing to protect water and move us towards living together in communities that are equal, just, and in right relationship with each other and with Mother Earth.